Hey guys, tonight we are leaving the frantic pace of the 21st century far behind and stepping into the soft, worn leather sandals of a Roman senator. Not on a day of battle or assassination, but on a perfectly, wonderfully ordinary day. You won't be conquering Gaul or crossing the Rubicon tonight. Instead, you'll be navigating the subtle politics of a morning greeting, the dizzying aroma of a marketplace, and the profound quiet of a study filled with scrolls. It's a history of quiet power, of linen togas, and of the sheer, staggering effort it took to simply be important in the ancient world. And just as a little reality check, while you might be dreaming of marble palaces, the truth is, you probably wouldn't survive the breakfast menu, let alone the political intrigue. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from, and what the local time is for you, so feel free to post that in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first sensation is not light, but sound. A discreet clearing of a throat about 3 feet from your head. It's a sound you know better than the crowing of the cocks or the distant rumble of carts on the Vicus Patricius. It's the sound of the day officially beginning, whether you like it or not. You crack open a single eye. The room is still pitch, the heavy wool curtains drawn tight against the early hour. But that sound is a precision instrument, calibrated to pierce the deepest slumber. Dominus, the voice whispers. It's Alexandros, your secretary, your ab actu, the man who makes you move. He's been standing there for a full 5 minutes, you realize, waiting for the exact moment when your sleep cycle is at its most shallow. The man has an almost supernatural talent for it. You grunt, a non-committal sound that could mean, go away, or I'm awake. Alexandros, fluent in 1,000 such grunts, takes it as the latter, and a thin grey light filters into the room. It's not yet dawn, but the deep, inky black of night has begun to soften at the edges. You're lying not in a bed as you might imagine it, but on a low, firm couch, a lectus, piled with good wool blankets. The room, your cubiculum, is small, windowless, and intimate, a deliberate design to keep you safe from drafts, and more importantly, from malevolent night spirits. The final client, a fish sauce merchant with breath that could stun a goat, finally shuffles out, his gratitude as pungent as his wares. The grand oak doors of the vestibulum swing shut with a soft, definitive thud, and for the first time since you awoke, a semblance of quiet returns to the atrium. The performance is over, but as Alexandros materializes at your elbow, you know the intermission is brief. The toga, Dominus, he says, his voice low and steady. It's not a suggestion. Out in the city, in the forum, the tunic is a sign of undress, of informality. To be seen as a senator, you must wear the uniform, no matter how absurdly impractical it is. You stand, arms slightly outstretched, as 2 household slaves, well practiced in this daily ritual, approach. One holds the folded, heavy mass of white wool, the toga praetexta with its broad purple stripe along its curved edge, signifying your rank. It looks deceptively simple, a giant semicircular blanket. It is, in reality, a 20-foot-long puzzle of fabric, and putting it on correctly without assistance is as likely as swimming the Tiber in full armor. The first slave drapes the long end over your left shoulder, letting about 1/3 of the fabric hang down your front, almost to the floor. They then wrap the bulk of the material around your back, under your right arm, and across your chest. Then comes the complex part, pulling the fabric back over your left shoulder again, arranging the final fold, the sinus, just so, and then adjusting the draped portion in front, the umbo, into a sort of stylish pouch. The whole process takes a good 5 minutes, and by the end, you are trussed up in multiple layers of thick wool. It's heavy, it's hot, and it forces you to move with a slow, deliberate dignity, your left arm bent and held against your body to keep the whole elaborate construction from collapsing into a puddle at your feet. This, you think not for the first time, is the true price of nobility, chronic overheating, and the inability to run for your life. Thus encased, you are ready to face the city. Alexandros hands you your signet ring, a heavy piece of carnelian engraved with your family crest, a griffin holding a lightning bolt. You slip it onto your finger, the final piece of the costume. You don't just feel like a senator now. You feel like an actor playing the part of a senator in a play that never ends. With a nod to the slaves who hold the doors open, you step from the cool, ordered tranquility of your domus into the vibrant, chaotic, and utterly overwhelming sensory assault that is a Roman street. At this moment, you feel like a bit of both. You have not conquered Gaul. You have not reformed the courts. Your name, if it is remembered at all, might be a footnote in a future scholar's text about water management. The thought is at once humbling and strangely liberating. The lamp sputters, the flame shrinking to a blue flicker before flaring back to life. The immediate battles still await. The vote, the poet's smear campaign, the debt. They have not vanished, but the frantic panic has subsided, replaced by a weary acceptance. This is your world. This is the game. You will fight for your aqueduct. You will outmaneuver Felix. You will pay your debts. Not for the glory of it, not for a legacy carved in marble, but because it is the part you have been given to play. You are the bird in the cage, and for now, the only thing left to do is sing the song that is expected of you. The frantic energy of the day, the sharp edges of political anxiety, they begin to soften now, to blur at the edges like ink on damp papyrus. Let them go. Let the image of the stern, judgmental masks fade from your mind's eye, and let the sound of the endless, arguing voices in the curia dissolve into a distant murmur, a river of sound flowing far away from this quiet moment. You have carried the weight of a senator's toga. You have felt the sun of a country estate on your skin. You have navigated the intricate, invisible webs of obligation and power. That work is done for now. The struggles of legacy and memory are for the waking world, for the light of day. Now, just feel the quiet of the room around you. A deep and settling silence. Notice the gentle rhythm of your own breath, the slow and steady pulse that has been with you through it all. There is no debate here, no ledger to balance, no speech to give. There is only this peace, this soft, dark expanse of rest that waits for you. The great machine of Rome slows its turning, the wheels of ambition and strife stilled for a time. You are not a senator here. You are not a patron. You are simply a presence, adrift on the calm waters of the night, letting the current carry you gently away from shores of responsibility towards the deep and dreamless sea of sleep. Let every worry, every thought, every memory become soft and indistinct, melting away into the welcoming dark, until there is nothing left but the quiet whisper of rest, a gentle lullaby for a soul that has journeyed long enough. The days that follow are a blur of re-immersion, a frantic effort to catch the rhythm of a dance that has sped up in your absence. The audience with Sura is a tense, business-like affair in his private study, a room that smells of ink and sea salt. He is cordial but direct. The papyrus tariff vote is imminent, and your support is not just expected, it is required. The debt, both financial and political, is called due. The poet Gallus seems to have vanished from the city's taverns, a worrying sign that he is now housed comfortably within Felix's patronage, his verses being polished into weapons. The air in the curia is thick with unspoken alliances and veiled threats. You speak, you debate, you maneuver, but it all feels reactive. You are playing a game of catch-up. And the walls of the city, both literal and figurative, feel closer than ever. It is on one such evening, after a long, frustrating day of procedural delays on the Aqueduct Commission, delays you are certain Felix engineered, that you find yourself alone in the tablinum. The household is asleep. A single oil lamp gutters on your desk, casting long dancing shadows that make the imagines of your ancestors seem to stir on their shelves. The silence of the city at night is different from the silence of the country. It's a watchful, pregnant quiet, broken by the occasional bark of a dog or the cry of a watchman. The weight of it all presses down on you. The endless calculations, the perpetual performance, the staggering cost of maintaining a place in this world. Your gaze falls upon the death masks. They are not realistic portraits, but idealized stern faces, each one a repository of a life's accumulated dignitas. Your father, your grandfather, your great-uncle. They were consuls, generals, censors. They expanded the empire, passed laws, built monuments. They are remembered. And you? You are a senator debating an aqueduct. A man trapped between a fat creditor and a bald liar. A patron whose greatest recent act was forgiving a farmer's debt. The mainstream historical fact of the Roman aristocratic mindset was this obsessive focus on legacy, on being remembered and celebrated by posterity. It was the fuel for ambition and the source of deepest anxiety. You think of the philosopher's cage. Was he right? Is all this, the toga, the senatorial debates, the desperate grasp for status, just a beautifully constructed prison? You think of the farmer spurious and his simple, desperate plea to simply remain on his land. His legacy would be his children, the continuity of his line on that small plot of earth. It is a humble ambition, but a clear one. Yours is a vast, shapeless thing, measured in speeches, in building projects, in the flickering opinion of fickle men. A quirky, fringe belief held by some Stoics was that true legacy was not in external monuments, but in the integrity of one's inner character, a notion that seemed both noble and utterly impractical here, in the heart of political Rome. You stand and walk to the cabinet, reaching out to touch the cool, painted wood of your father's mask. What would he think of your struggles? Would he see a worthy successor, or a man drowning in the complexities of a system he helped build? Historians still argue whether the late Roman Republic's elite were visionary leaders navigating an impossibly complex state, or a self-interested aristocracy fiddling while the world burned. The barber awaits, Dominus, Alexandros murmurs, his Greek accent softening the hard Latin consonants. And the clients have already begun to gather in the atrium. You push yourself up, your joints complaining. You're not old, not by modern standards, maybe 45, but by the metrics of Rome, you're in your prime, which means everything hurts a little in the morning. A slave, a boy of maybe 10, appears from the shadows with a ceramic chamber pot, and you take care of your first business of the day with a weary sigh. The mainstream historical fact of your morning is this simple, universal ritual of waking. The quirky tidbit is the widespread Roman belief that the first words you spoke upon waking could set the tone for the entire day. So Alexandros always ensured his first word to you was a respectful Dominus, never something unlucky. A moment later, you're seated on a stool in the slightly larger antechamber, and the barber, a man named Lucius with fingers that smell of olive oil and iron, sets to work. This isn't a luxurious spa-like experience. It's a necessary and mildly perilous maintenance ritual. He uses a thin, sharp iron razor, dipping it in water from a small bronze bowl. There's no shaving cream, just a bit of oil. You sit perfectly still, acutely aware of the blade scraping against your skin, the tiny stinging nicks that are an inevitable part of the process. He trims your hair too and cleans under your fingernails. It's a full-service and utterly terrifying affair. Historians still argue whether Roman barbers also acted as dentists and minor surgeons, pulling teeth and lancing boils, or if that's just an exaggeration from grisly satires. Sitting here, feeling Lucius's unwavering hand, you're not entirely sure you want to know the answer. Once the barber has packed up and you've been helped into your simple, at-home tunic, the real costume change comes later. You pad barefoot into the atrium. This is the heart of the domus, the traditional Roman house. The room is open to the sky in the center, where a rectangular pool, the impluvium, catches the rainwater now beginning to glimmer with the first true rays of the sun. The air is cool and damp. The floor is a masterpiece of colored marble chips. A mosaic depicting a rather ferocious-looking Neptune calming a storm. A not-so-subtle reminder of your family's, or at least your predecessors' nautical ambitions, and there they are, a line of men, maybe 24 of them, standing patiently by the entrance. Your clients. They are a mixed bag. A few well-dressed merchants looking slightly impatient. A grizzled old veteran missing 2 fingers on his left hand. A young poet clutching a scroll, his knuckles white. They see you and a low murmur ripples through them. This is the salutatio, the morning greeting. It's the bedrock of Roman social politics. They come to pay their respects to you, their patronus. In return, you are expected to provide them with a small basket of food, the sportula, or a bit of coin, and more importantly, your legal and political support. You take your position in a slightly raised chair, your sella curalis, a folding stool that is a symbol of your magisterial rank. It's not particularly comfortable, but that's not the point. The point is to be seen sitting in it. Alexandros stands just behind your shoulder, a wax tablet in hand, ready to whisper names and remind you of any pertinent details. You begin the slow, ritualistic work of receiving them one by one. A clasp of the forearm, a few murmured words. Ave Patronus, Ave Marse, how is your wife's cough? You don't actually care about the cough, but the asking of the question is a form of social currency. It shows you remember, you are engaged. You exchange a few words with the veteran, who is seeking a letter of introduction for his son to join a legion stationed in the relatively peaceful province of Lusitania. Anywhere but Germania, he mutters, and you can't blame him. You promise the letter. To the poet, you offer a non-committal, I look forward to reading your latest work, which is the Roman equivalent of, I'll get back to you. The whole process takes the better part of an hour. It's tedious, it's performative, and it's absolutely essential. This daily parade is what defines your influence. Your dignitas, your personal standing and reputation, is measured by the length and quality of this line. No clients, no power. It's as simple and as brutal as that. As the last client departs with his small purse of coins, the sun finally crests the roofline of the houses across the street, flooding the atrium with a golden light that makes the water in the impluvium sparkle. You feel the weight of the day settling on your shoulders, a familiar heavy cloak. You've navigated the first hurdle. The city is now fully awake, and so, inevitably, are you. A jostling porter, carrying a huge amphora on his shoulder, bumps into you without a second glance. You are no longer the revered patron in your villa. You are just another body in the relentless urban current. Your feet carry you almost instinctively, not towards your home, but towards the forum. You need to see it, to taste the political air. As you emerge from the Argiletum into the main square, the scene is both exactly the same and utterly different. The same money changers clink their coins, the same vendors shout their wares, the same crowds mill around the rostra. But your eyes, sharpened by distance, see the subtle shifts. There are more soldiers stationed near the Curia. The clients clustered around the Lacus Curtius are reading a new batch of libelli, and you catch your own name in a snippet of conversation. Senator Marcus and his expensive water. A man scoffs to his friend before they are swallowed by the crowd. You see Lucius Aelius, your colleague from the Basilica, and his eyes widen in surprise before he offers a hasty, somewhat guarded greeting. Marcus, you're back. I trust the country air was restorative. His tone suggests he knows it was anything but. The mainstream historical fact of the Roman political world was its intense, incestuous nature. A few weeks away was an eternity, long enough for alliances to shift and new plots to crystallize. You finally make your way to your domus. The atrium feels smaller, darker, after the open vistas of Tibur. The imagines of your ancestors seem to stare at you with a new intensity, as if questioning what you have accomplished in your time away. Herennius, your estate manager, is waiting, a new stack of tablets in his hand. There is no gentle re-entry. Dominus, he says, bypassing any welcome. A message from Lucius Aemilius Sura. He requests an audience at your earliest convenience. He mentioned the matter of the papyrus tariffs. The reminder of your debt is the first piece of business. Then Herennius adds, and the poet, Gallus. He was seen again, yesterday, entering the house of Senator Felix. He stayed for several hours. The pieces are all in motion. The game has continued without you, and your seat at the table feels less secure. The weight of the city, of your responsibilities, of the endless, intricate struggle for position, settles upon you fully now, a heavier mantle than any toga. The vacation is over. The cage door, if it was ever truly open, has swung shut behind you. The noise hits you first. It's a solid wall of sound. The clatter of iron-rimmed cartwheels on the basalt paving stones is a constant, grating percussion. Vendors' cries slice through the din. A man selling chickpeas from a steaming pot, his voice a reedy whine, competing with a brawny charcoal seller's booming baritone. A hammer rings from a blacksmith's open-fronted shop, clang, 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 while from an upstairs apartment, the shrill sound of a domestic argument spills out into the street. And underneath it all, the murmur of 1,000 simultaneous conversations, a river of human noise. The smell is layered. The first hit is the sharp, familiar tang of urine from the fuller's shops, where they use it to bleach cloth. Then comes the smell of baking bread from a nearby bakery, a warm, comforting scent that almost, but not quite, masks the odor of unwashed bodies, of garlic on breath, of the faint but ever-present miasma from the open drains running down the center of the street. You pull a corner of your toga up over your nose, a futile gesture, but a necessary one. You don't walk alone. As you step out, a small retinue forms around you. 2 large, silent bodyguards, your lecticari, take up positions front and back. They're not there for show. While the city is mostly safe in daylight, a senator in his full regalia is a walking bank vault. Alexandros walks a half step behind your left shoulder, a leather satchel of documents under his arm. A young slave boy, your pedisequus, scurries ahead, his job to clear a path through the crowds, a task he accomplishes with a combination of polite, make way for the senator, and well-placed elbows. The journey to the forum is less than a mile, but it's an obstacle course. You have to sidestep a pile of fresh donkey droppings, You press yourself against a wall to let a litter carried by 8 massive Syrians pass by, the embroidered curtains drawn tight against the common world. You catch a glimpse of a wealthy matron inside, her face powdered white with lead-based cosmetics. A mainstream historical practice we now know was slowly poisoning her. A stray chicken darts between your feet, squawking in indignation. You pass a street-side shrine to Lares, the household gods, where a small offering of wine and bread has been left. A quirky tidbit of daily Roman piety existing side by side with the filth and commerce. Historians still argue whether the average Roman truly believed in these minor deities, or if it was just a force of habit, a cultural superstition they dared not ignore. Your progress is slow, ceremonial. People nod respectfully as you pass. Some of your clients from this morning call out a greeting, but you also feel the weight of other eyes. A group of young plebeians, lounging on the steps of a tavern, give you a look that is not quite respect, but a sort of sullen appraisal. They see the toga, the bodyguards, the entourage, and they see the system that keeps them in their place. You are a symbol of it. It's in these moments, surrounded by the teeming, vibrant, and occasionally hostile life of the city, that you feel the immense, fragile artifice of your position. Your power is real, but it is a performance that requires a willing audience. And in Rome, the audience is notoriously fickle. You make your way towards the Basilica Julia, its immense 2-storied arcade providing a sliver of shade. This is where the civil law courts are held, and the air buzzes with a different kind of energy, the anxious hum of litigants, the confident boom of advocates warming up their vocal cords, the frantic whispering of clerks. You spot a colleague, Senator Lucius Aelius, leaning against a column, deep in conversation with a man you recognize as a notoriously slippery auctioneer. They see you, and the conversation instantly stops, replaced with broad, performative smiles. "Marcus, well met," Aelius booms, clasping your forearm. The auctioneer melts away into the crowd. "Fine day for commerce," Aelius says, his eyes twinkling. You exchange a few pleasantries, your words light but your minds racing, each of you trying to read the other's intentions, his alliances for the day. This is the true currency of the forum. Information, traded in glances, half-finished sentences, and the names of who was seen talking to whom. You continue your slow perambulation, a walking node in the city's political network. You pause to watch the Argentari, the moneylenders and bankers, at their tables near the Temple of Saturn. They sit with their scales and abaci, their faces impassive as they negotiate loans, change currency, and finance the empire's trade. A mainstream historical fact of economic life that underpins everything from a legion's pay to the price of your upcoming dinner party. The sheer, mundane bureaucracy of power is on full display here. Near them, a public scribe, a skinny man with ink-stained fingers, is carefully etching a legal document for an illiterate farmer, his fee a small pile of bronze coins. It's a quirky fringe tidbit of Roman life. The entire might of the law, accessible only through the paid services of a man who may or may not be adding a few extra clauses for his own benefit. Your stroll takes you past the Lacus Curtius, a sunken paved area that now serves as the city's most prestigious bulletin board. People are crowded around, reading the whitewashed notices that have been painted onto its walls. It's all there. Official edicts from the praetor, announcements of upcoming gladiatorial games, and, most interestingly, the libelli, the scandal sheets and political pamphlets. You scan them idly. One accuses a certain quaestor of embezzling public funds to build a grotto for his pet eels. Another, written in a much cruder hand, simply says, "Senator Felix is a bald liar," with a crude drawing next to it. You suppress a smirk. Historians still argue whether these graffiti were a genuine form of popular political expression or just orchestrated smear campaigns by rivals. Looking at the venom on display, you suspect it's a hearty mix of both. Finally, you feel a tap on your shoulder. It's Alexandros, Dominus. "The hour approaches," he murmurs, nodding towards the Curia Julia. The crowd around the Senate House is thickening, the togas of your colleagues forming little white islands in the sea of tunics. You take a final deep breath of the forum's unique atmosphere, a blend of power, money, piety, and gossip. The morning's informal dance is over. Now the formal session begins. You adjust the umbo of your toga, feeling the weight of the wool and the weight of expectation settle back onto your shoulders. The performance is about to move to its main stage. The presiding consul, a man named Gaius Fabinius, with the weary expression of a schoolmaster, enters and takes his place on the dais. The murmur dies down to a respectful silence. The day's agenda is announced, and it's as dry as the dust in the air. A review of tax farming contracts in Asia Minor, a report on the state of the Via Appia, and then the main event, a debate on the proposed construction of a new aqueduct, the Aqua Claudia, an extension to bring more water to the Aventine Hill. This is where the real battle lines are drawn. The first speakers are for the proposal. They talk of public health, of the dignity of the Roman people, of the necessity of clean water to prevent plague. It's all very noble, very difficult to argue against. Then the opposition rises. It's led by none other than Aulus Vitellius, a man whose girth is matched only by his personal fortune, much of it tied up in the existing and grossly inadequate private water cartel that serves the Aventine. He heaves himself to his feet, his toga straining at the seams, and begins to speak. His voice is a surprise, high, reedy, and dripping with a faux concern for the treasury. At what cost, fathers of the Republic, he whines. Shall we drain the public coffers to bathe every pleb in the city? This is not a matter of public health, but of public indulgence. The springs they propose to tap are known to be weak, the land unstable. I have it on good authority. He goes on, weaving a tapestry of half-truths and outright lies, his good authority being, you suspect, a soothsayer he paid to read the entrails of a chicken unfavourably. This is the quirky, fringe element of Roman politics, the way hard engineering and public finance could be derailed by appeals to bad omens and the private profits of a few fat senators. You watch the faces in the room. Some are listening intently, others are feigning interest, a few are openly dozing. Historians still argue whether most senators were genuinely engaged in these debates or if they were merely posturing for their constituencies. Their votes already decided by backroom deals made hours before in the Basilica Julia. Looking at the glazed eyes and the subtle hand signals being passed between Vitellius's allies, you're leaning heavily towards the latter. It's your cue. You rise slowly, letting the heavy wool of your toga settle. All eyes turn to you. You don't launch into a rebuttal immediately. You begin by praising Vitellius's prudence. You speak of the importance of fiscal responsibility, of the need to safeguard the water supply. You see a few eyebrows raise, then you pivot. You talk about the fires that swept the Aventine last year. Fires the Vigiles couldn't contain because the water pressure was so low. You mention the rents that are plummeting in the district, a direct hit to the property portfolios of many in this room. You speak not of bathing plebs, but of protecting the investments of senators. You propose a compromise, a state-funded commission, which you just happen to have a list of potential members for, to oversee the project and ensure its fiscal and engineering soundness. It's a power grab, thinly veiled as a solution. The debate erupts again, but now it's on your terms. The session dissolves into a cacophony of shouted points of order, personal insults, and procedural squabbles. No vote is taken. It's been tabled for further discussion, which means further negotiation outside this hall. The consul bangs his gavel, looking profoundly relieved to be ending the session. As you file out, back into the blinding sun and the roar of the forum, you feel a familiar mix of exhaustion and grim satisfaction. You haven't won, but you haven't lost. In the Roman Senate, that's often the best you can hope for. The press of the crowd begins to shift, the chaotic energy of the side streets funneling into a more purposeful, if still overwhelming, flow. The buildings start to change too. The cramped, multi-storied insulae with their rickety wooden balconies give way to grander marble-fronted structures. The scent of baking bread and urine is slowly overpowered by the smell of incense, of polished stone, and the metallic tang of money. You've crossed an invisible boundary. The cramped, pungent arteries of the city have emptied you into its heart. You have arrived at the Forum Romanum. It's not a single building, but a sprawling, open-air plaza, a cacophony of civic, religious, and commercial life, all happening at once and at full volume. It's the stage upon which the drama of Rome is performed daily, and the sheer scale of it never fails to strike you, even after 1,000 visits. To your left, the ancient, dark volcano, a sacred precinct to the fire god, feels somber and primal. To your right, the gleaming white marble of the Temple of Castor and Pollux, its tall columns spearing into the bright blue sky, a testament to imperial vanity and divine aspiration. And everywhere people, a sea of them. They clot around the raised platform of the rostra, where a man with a voice like grinding stones is haranguing a small crowd about grain prices. They jostle around the open-fronted tabernae, the shops that line the edges, haggling over everything from Egyptian papyrus to fine Sicilian olives. Your little procession cuts a slow, deliberate swath through this chaos. Your bodyguard's bulk and your own toga-clad presence act as a sort of social plough, parting the waters. People glance, recognize the purple stripe, and make room, their conversations dipping for a moment before rising again behind you. You don't head for the Curia Julia, the Senate House, just yet. The day's formal session is still a while off. First, there is the informal parliament, the real political work conducted not in the hushed halls of power, but right here in the open air. The bronze doors of the Curia swing shut behind you, cutting off the last echoes of rhetorical fury. Stepping back into the forum is like walking into a physical wall of heat and noise after the cool, rarefied atmosphere of the Senate House. Your head is pounding, a dull throb born from the stifling weight of the toga, the strain of political performance, and the sheer mental exhaustion of passing Aulus Vitellius's labyrinthine lies. The formal part of your public duty is over, and a more primal need takes over, the need for food, for a moment of quiet, and for a dose of the city's unvarnished gossip. It's time for prandium, lunch. You don't head for one of the many popinae, the hot food taverns that cater to the common man, their smoky interiors smelling of fried fish and cheap wine. Instead, you and Alexandros make for a specific shaded corner of the porticus of Gaius and Lucius, a grand colonnade that offers a refuge from the sun. Here, a more refined class of vendor operates, their wares laid out on clean cloths. Fresh cheeses, hard-boiled eggs, olives marinated in thyme, and flat rounds of bread. Your pedisequus, the young slave boy, is dispatched and returns moments later with a small basket containing your lunch. It's simple, cold, and requires no ceremony. You find an empty stone bench tucked between two massive marble columns, a spot that affords a view of the bustling forum while keeping you slightly removed from its flow. You shrug the heavy, woolen toga off your shoulders, letting it pool around your waist, and the feeling of relief is immediate. A cool breeze, funneled by the colonnade, touches the damp tunic beneath. You take a bite of bread and a sip of the well-watered wine from a small skin Alexandros carries. For a few moments, you just eat in silence, watching the endless parade of Roman life. The crowd parts before you with a deference that feels different now, more formal, more charged. You are no longer just a senator moving through the marketplace. You are a member of the world's most exclusive club approaching its inner sanctum. The Curia Julia, the Senate House, is a surprisingly austere building. A heavy rectangular block of brick-faced concrete and marble, its grandeur derived from its purpose, not its ornamentation. A few wide, steep steps lead up to its bronze doors, which are flanked by two impassive legionaries from the Praetorian Guard, their segmented armor gleaming in the sun. Their eyes scanning the crowd with a bored professionalism. They aren't here to keep people out necessarily, but to define the boundary. On this side, the chaotic, sweaty reality of Rome. On the other, the theoretical and often theatrical process of governing it. You mount the steps, your bodyguards peeling off to wait with the other attendants and slaves in the shaded portico. Only Alexandros follows you, his satchel of documents now looking less like an accessory and more like a piece of vital equipment. You cross the threshold, and the world changes. The cacophony of the forum, the shouting, the cartwheels, the bleating of sheep being led to sacrifice, is instantly muffled, reduced to a distant rhythmic hum. It's like plunging your head underwater. The air inside is cool and still, smelling of old wax, polished wood, and a faint, dusty scent of papyrus. The interior is vast and dim, a cavernous hall designed to impress and intimidate. High windows near the ceiling cast down slanted pillars of light, illuminating swirling motes of dust. The walls are lined with marble, and at the far end, presiding over everything, is a raised dais for the presiding consul. But your eyes are drawn to the floor, a breathtaking expanse of coloured marble inlays. Greens from Greece, reds from Egypt, yellows from Numidia, a silent map of the empire's extracted wealth. The seating is arranged in three wide semicircular tiers that sweep around the hall, the subcellia. There are no desks, no nameplates. This is not a place for paperwork. It's a place for oratory, for performance. You find your spot, a space on the second tier that has, through years of unspoken tradition, become yours. The senators are filtering in, a slow tide of white and purple. The silence is broken by the low murmur of hundreds of men speaking in hushed, conspiratorial tones. You see old Severus, his head already nodding with sleep, propped up by a patient slave. You see young, fiery Cursor pacing in the aisle, his toga looking as restless as he is, already rehearsing his speech in furious whispers. You nod to a few allies, men whose interests in the grain supply or the state mines align with your own. You pointedly ignore Senator Felix, the bald liar from the graffiti, who is holding court with a cluster of sycophants near the dais. The mainstream historical fact of this gathering is its sheer longevity. This body, in one form or another, has been the nominal heart of Roman governance for centuries, a fact every man in this room feels in his bones. The walk from the Forum to the Baths of Trajan is a gradual ascent, both physically and socially. You leave the democratic chaos of the city's political heart behind, climbing the Oppian Hill towards one of the empire's most magnificent monuments to leisure. The sheer, curved bulk of the Bath complex rises before you, a sprawling palace of red brick and marble that dwarfs the cramped insulae surrounding it. It's less a building and more a man-made mountain of pleasure, its scale a deliberate reminder of the emperor who built it, and the power that provides such comforts. The cries of the street vendors are replaced by the sound of water, the distant, thunderous rush of the aqueducts feeding the vast reservoirs, and the closer, gentler splash of fountains in the landscaped gardens. You enter through a grand archway into the Palaestra, a vast open-air courtyard designed for exercise. The air here is thick with the smell of sand, sweat, and the oil used by wrestlers. Young men, their bodies glistening, are engaged in a furious game of harpastum, a brutal ball game that involves a lot of shouting, shoving, and the occasional dislocated shoulder. Others lift heavy weights or practice with a wooden sword against a post. You feel a twinge of envy at their effortless athleticism, a feeling you quickly quash. Your exercise these days is more cerebral, a different kind of wrestling entirely. You bypass the games, your destination being the baths themselves, but not before a stop at the Apoditerium. The changing room is a marvel of organization and potential theft. Row upon row of small open niches line the walls, each numbered. A bored-looking slave, the Capsarius, assigns you one. With the help of your own slaves, you begin the intricate process of disassembling the toga. It's folded with ritualistic care. This garment costs more than a shopkeeper makes in a year, and its loss would be a social and financial catastrophe. You place it, your tunic, and your sandals in the niche, a moment of vulnerability as you shed the layers of your public identity. You keep only your signet ring on your finger. Its impression in wax can authorize contracts or transfer fortunes, and you'd never leave it unattended. The mainstream historical fact of Roman bathing is its communal nature. This was a place where social hierarchies were, in theory, stripped away along with clothing, though in practice, the rich always found a way to distinguish themselves. Wrapped in a simple, coarse linen cloth, you feel strangely light, both physically and psychologically. The first stop is the Frigidarium. The room is breathtaking, a soaring hall with a vaulted, mosaic-covered ceiling depicting sea nymphs and tritons. In its center is a large cold plunge pool, its water a shocking clear blue. You dip a foot in and recoil. It's like stepping into a mountain stream. Taking a deep breath, you lower yourself in. The cold seizing your chest, stealing your breath for a moment before your body acclimates. It's a brutal, invigorating shock to the system, washing away the grime of the Forum and the lingering torpor of the Senate debate. From there, you move into the heart of the complex, the Tepidarium. This is the warm room, a transitional space heated by the hypercaust system, the hollow floors and walls through which hot air from the furnaces is pumped. The air is thick, humid, and perfumed with sandalwood from a brazier in the corner. You lie down on a warm marble slab, the heat seeping into your muscles, loosening the knots of tension in your shoulders and back. This is where you begin to truly unwind, where the political anxieties of the day start to dissolve in the moist heat. The languid, steam-soaked serenity of the baths evaporates the moment you step back into your home. The atmosphere in the atrium is different now. The public performance of the Salutatio is a distant memory, replaced by a quiet, focused tension. The scent of wax and papyrus has overpowered the floral notes from the impluvium garden. Waiting for you, standing beside your study door with the patient stillness of a statue, is Herennius, your estate manager. He holds a stack of wooden diptychs, their wax faces covered in neat, cramped script. The sight of him and those tablets is a cold splash of reality after the heated comforts of the Caldarium. It's time for the accounting. Your study, the tablinum, is a small business-like room situated between the atrium and the peristyle garden, symbolically linking the public and private spheres of your life. Here, your family records are stored in wooden cabinets, the death masks of your ancestors, the imagines, staring down from their shelves with blank, judgmental eyes. You settle into a heavy oak chair behind a sturdy table, the toga feeling absurdly formal in this private space. Herennius places the first diptych before you with a soft thud. He is a freedman, a former slave of your father's, a man whose loyalty is beyond question because his prosperity is irrevocably tied to your own. His face is a roadmap of wrinkles, each one earned in the service of your family's fortune. The monthly accounts from the latifundia, Dominus, he says, his voice dry and precise. He opens the diptych. The left tablet details income, the sale of this year's olive oil from the groves in Venafrum, a good yield, the price holding steady. The wool clip from the sheep pastures in Apulia. Less impressive, the quality noted as coarse by the brokers in Brundisium. The rent from the tenant farmers on your Campanian lands, a mix of coin and a share of their grain. It's a healthy, respectable list, the predictable heartbeat of your agricultural wealth. A group of Egyptian priests, their heads shaved, walk by in solemn procession. A money changer argues loudly with a soldier over the purity of his silver denarii. It's a vibrant, chaotic democracy of the everyday, a stark contrast to the stilted, oligarchic theatre you just left. As you eat, Alexandros, who has been quietly observing the crowd like a spider at the edge of its web, leans in. "A curious piece of news, Dominus," he begins, his voice low. "It seems the young poet, the one from this morning's salutatio, did not go to the libraries as he claimed." He pauses for effect. He was seen entering a rather notorious cookshop near the Subura, one frequented by followers of the New Eastern cult of Serapis. He lets the implication hang in the air. This is the real prandium for a man of your station. Not the bread and cheese, but the information. The mainstream historical fact of the Roman grapevine is its breathtaking speed and efficiency. A network of slaves, clients, and informants that often knows a man's secrets before he's even committed them. You grunt, unimpressed. Poets and their desperate searches for inspiration. What of it? It is not the cult itself, Dominus, Alexandros continues, a faint smile on his lips, but the company he kept there. He was seen in deep conversation with a known scribe for Senator Felix. Now that is interesting. Felix, the bald liar, whose name was scrawled on the Lacus Curdius, is one of Vitellius's most vocal supporters. A poet from your own clientele, whom you dismissed with a patronizing promise, is now whispering with the opposition. It's a tiny piece of data, a single thread, but in the tapestry of Roman politics, you learn to watch for loose threads. They can sometimes unravel entire alliances. This is the quirky, fringe tidbit of the day. The way major political shifts could be hinted at by the movements of a starving artist in a dubious eatery. To complete the picture, Alexandros produces from his satchel not a wax tablet, but a few ragged sheets of papyrus. These are the Acta Diurna, the Daily Gazette. It's not a newspaper in the modern sense. It's a transcript of sorts, compiled by imperial clerks, of the day's main events in the Senate and law courts, along with official announcements and a smattering of society news. You scan the densely written script. There, in dry official language, is a summary of the aqueduct debate. Your name is mentioned, your proposal for a commission noted. But the reporting is slant, clearly favoring Vitellius's position, framing his obstruction as fiscal conservatism. Historians still argue whether the Acta Diurna were a genuine tool for public information or a sophisticated form of imperial propaganda, a way to shape the narrative for the literate elite. Reading this biased account, you have your answer. You finish the last olive and wash it down with the tart wine. The simple meal has restored you, but the information you've consumed is less digestible. The poet's betrayal, the slanted gazette, it all points to a coordinated effort against your aqueduct proposal. The public debate is merely the echo. The real battle was fought this morning in the basilica and is now being fought in cookshops and through scribes. You stand up, the toga feeling even heavier now as you drape it back over your shoulder. The respite is over. The afternoon awaits, and with it, the next stage of the endless game, conducted in a far steamier and arguably more honest arena, the baths. This is the mainstream historical fact of a senator's life. His political power in Rome was funded almost entirely by the silent, relentless productivity of his rural estates, often managed by a trusted freedman like Herennius. Then he opens the right tablet. The expenses. This is where the numbers tighten their grip on your chest. The list is long and damning. The maintenance of the villa itself. New roof tiles. Repairs to the hypocaust. The salary for the Greek mosaicist you hired to redo the triclinium floor. The wages for the 100-odd slaves who don't work the fields. The cooks. The stable boys. The secretaries. The bodyguards. The cost of feeding them all. A staggering amount of wheat, beans, and cheap wine. Then there are the public expenses. The ones that can't be avoided if you want to maintain your dignitas. Your contribution to the upcoming Ludi Apollinaris Games, 5,000 sesterces for the gladiators alone. The cost of the sportula you handed out this morning. A daily drain that adds up to a fortune over a year. The banquet you are planning for next week. Oysters from Baiae, mullet from Ostia, thrush tongues, fine Falernian wine aged 20 years, musicians, dancers. The list makes your head spin. Herennius points a bony finger at a specific entry. The interest payment on the loan from Lucius Aemilius Sura, Dominus. The amount is eye-watering. You'd borrowed heavily last year to secure a lucrative priesthood. A position that came with immense prestige, but required a massive upfront donation to the imperial treasury. The quirky fringe tidbit of Roman finance was that usury was technically frowned upon for citizens. So these massive loans were often structured as friendship agreements, with exorbitant but discreet rates of interest. Your ally from the baths is also, quite lucratively, your creditor. You lean back, the chair groaning under the weight of your anxiety. The numbers don't lie. The outflow is perilously close to matching the inflow. One bad harvest, one shipwreck of a cargo you've invested in, one overly extravagant public spectacle, and the delicate equilibrium shatters. You feel the pressure not as an abstract concept, but as a physical weight. This is the true engine of Roman politics, the grubby, unspoken reality. The speeches in the Curia, the deference in the Forum, the purple stripe on your toga, all of it is underwritten by columns of figures on wax tablets. Your vote, your influence, your very presence in the Senate has a precise, calculable cost. Historians still argue whether the staggering personal expenses required of Roman senators ultimately weakened the aristocracy by driving them into debt, or simply cemented the power of the ultra-rich who could afford the game. Looking at the numbers in front of you, you feel it is both a weakening and a cementing, a slow, grinding process that either made you stronger or broke you completely. There is one other matter, Herennius says, his voice dropping, though no one else is in the room. The matter of the poet Gallus, the one you asked me to inquire about. He slides a smaller single tablet towards you. It contains a brief report, gleaned from the network of slaves and freedmen that constitutes your private intelligence service. Gallus, the aspiring poet from your clientele, is not just dabbling in Eastern cults. He is the nephew of a minor clerk in the office of the praetor, who handles public contracts, including, potentially, the contracts for the Aqua Claudia aqueduct. His meeting with Felix's man wasn't about poetry, it was about information. Felix is digging for something, some leverage, some piece of financial or procedural vulnerability he can use to sink your aqueduct proposal, and, by extension, you. The accounting is no longer just about money. It's about power, and your balance is looking precarious. You dismiss Herennius with a tired wave, instructing him to make the usual economies. Cheaper wine for the slaves. Delay the mosaicist for another month. As he leaves, you remain seated, staring at the impassive faces of your ancestors. They built this fortune through war, through thrift, through ruthless calculation. You are spending it just to keep a seat at the table. The afternoon light slants through the window, illuminating the dancing dust motes. They look like gold coins, swirling just out of reach. The cloying scent of hot wax and financial anxiety lingers in the tablinum long after Herennius has gone. For days, the weight of the city, of the ledgers, of Felix's veiled machinations, has pressed in on you, a constant, low-grade fever of stress. The marble walls of your domus, once a symbol of solidity, now feel like the sides of a beautifully decorated trap. The air is thick with dust and the lingering odors of the street, and the relentless hammering noise of Rome has become a physical presence, a pounding inside your own skull. You can't think, you can't breathe. It's time to escape. The decision is made with a single sharp command to Alexandros. Have the litter ready at dawn. We go to Tiber. The relief is immediate, a tiny crack in the pressure vessel. The preparations are a whirlwind of quiet efficiency, a reverse of the morning salutatio. Instead of clients receiving sportula, slaves are packing trunks with simple tunics, writing materials, and a selection of scrolls from your library, some philosophy for appearance's sake, some lighter Greek poetry for actual enjoyment. The elaborate toga is folded away with a sense of finality. At the villa, you can be a man, not a senator. Dawn the next day finds you being carried out of the city, not on your own feet, but in a litter. It's a covered sedan chair, borne on the shoulders of 8 strapping Syrians, their muscles corded and gleaming with sweat despite the early hour. You draw the linen curtains partly shut, creating a private, swaying world. Through the gap, you watch Rome recede. The towering insulae give way to the grand tombs lining the Via Praenestina, then to market gardens and scattered villas. With each rhythmic step of the litter-bearers, the city's noise fades, replaced by the rhythmic crunch of their sandals on the gravel road and the distant call of a lark. The air changes too. The complex stench of humanity, industry and decay is slowly filtered out, replaced by the simple, honest smells of dust, wild herbs, and sun-baked earth. You take a deep, cleansing breath, the first you feel you've taken in weeks. The journey is a slow, luxurious unspooling of tension. The litter sways gently, a cradle on shoulders, lulling you into a doze. You pass farmers driving carts piled high with produce for the city you've just left. A legionary cohort on patrol marches past in a cloud of dust and rhythmic clanking, their centurion barking a respectful greeting to the obviously wealthy litter. You glimpse the shimmering serpentine line of the Aqua Marcia aqueduct, another marvel of engineering carrying water to the thirsty metropolis, a reminder of the very project that is causing you so much grief. Slaves move silently through the haze, offering cups of cool water. You close your eyes, listening to the low murmur of conversations, the soft slap of bare feet on marble. It's here, in this drowsy, semi-public space, that business often begins. You don't even have to open your eyes to know who has settled onto the slab next to you. The scent of his particular expensive ointment, a mix of myrrh and cinnamon, precedes him. "Marcus," a familiar voice rumbles. "You look as though you wrestled a bear in the Curia today." You crack open an eye. It's Lucius Aemilius Sura, a man whose family's wealth is older than the Republic itself, most of it tied up in the grain trade and, more recently, shipping ventures. He's a bull of a man, with a chest matted with grey hair and a face weathered by sun and salt spray. He's also, not coincidentally, the man you needed to see. "We wrestled with Vitellius," you reply, your voice relaxed. "It amounts to the same thing. More blubber, less honor," Sura barks a laugh that echoes in the steamy room. "That man's fortune is built on sand and bad water. Speaking of which, this new aqueduct of yours, if it goes through, it would open up the whole Aventine for proper development. Warehouses, proper insulae, workshops that don't burn down every summer." He pauses, letting the business opportunity hang in the steam between you. "My ships bring in Egyptian linen, Spanish olive oil, Gallic glass. I need storage, secure storage, close to the emporium but away from the river's stink. The Aventine is perfect, but not without a reliable water supply for the workers and for fire control. This is the real purpose of the baths. It's a club, a boardroom, a neutral ground. Here, semi-naked and stripped of your formal insignia, deals are brokered with a candor impossible in the forum. You discuss the Aqueduct Commission, and you subtly suggest that a man with Sura's practical experience in logistics would be a valuable member. He, in turn, mentions a certain vote coming up regarding the tariffs on imported Egyptian papyrus, a measure you've been lukewarm on, but that he desperately wants killed. A quid pro quo, negotiated not over a desk, but on a warm marble slab. It's a quirky fringe aspect of Roman economics, how the fate of a public water project could be decided by a private deal about papyrus taxes, all while 2 nearly naked men slowly steam themselves. Satisfied with the unspoken agreement, you both rise and move into the final chamber, the caldarium. The heat here is intense, a dry, searing wave that hits you as you cross the threshold. The room is a dome, lit by a giant oculus at its peak, through which a shaft of blinding sunlight pierces the steam. The air is so hot it's difficult to breathe deeply. In the center is a large, shallow pool of hot water, fed by a bronze spout in the shape of a lion's head. You sink into it with a groan of pure bliss, the near scalding water working out the last remnants of stiffness. Sura sinks in beside you, his face turning a florid red. Historians still argue whether these extreme temperature fluctuations were beneficial to health or a form of slow, collective madness. At this moment, feeling the political grime and physical fatigue melt away, you are firmly in the former camp. You stay until your fingers are pruned and your mind is blissfully empty of everything except the sensation of heat. Eventually, you drag yourself out, feeling boneless and clean. The process reverses. A scrape with a strigil in the tepidarium to remove the oil and sweat. A final, bracing plunge in the frigidarium to close the pores. And then back to the apoditerium where your clothes and your public identity await. As you are wrapped once more in the toga, you feel its weight differently. It's no longer just a burden. It's the uniform of the game, and you've just advanced your piece. The city's dirt has been washed away, but the intricate, often dirty work of power has just been refreshed. The profound silence of the villa, so restorative for the first day, begins to feel less like a balm and more like a void by the second morning. The view from the portico is eternally beautiful, the air perpetually clean, but a subtle anxiety begins to prickle at the edges of your piece. You are a spider too far from your web. In Rome, information is the air you breathe. Here, you are holding your breath, wondering what is happening back in the city without you. The political world does not pause for a man's retreat, and the fate of your aqueduct commission and the delicate pact with Sura is being decided in your absence. After the morning's tour of the estate, you retreat to the villa's library, a small, cool room with scroll-lined shelves and a window facing a courtyard fountain. This is where the illusion of rural escape meets the reality of long-distance governance. Alexandros has already set up a temporary scriptorium at a large table, laying out your wax tablets, papyrus, ink, and pens. The first order of business is dictating letters. This is the Roman internet, a slow, deliberate, and profoundly personal network of correspondence that binds the empire's elite together. You start with Lucius Aemilius Sura, your creditor and ally. The letter must be a masterpiece of subtext. You cannot seem desperate, nor can you appear disengaged. You dictate to Alexandros, whose stylus flies across the tablet, his shorthand a blur of elegant marks. You begin with pleasantries, the healthfulness of the Tiburtine air, the quality of the hunting. Then, you casually mention the progress of the olive harvest, a not-so-subtle reminder of your financial solidity. Only then do you circle the real subject. I trust affairs in the city proceed with their usual vigor, you dictate, your voice calm. I think often of our conversation in the baths and the mutual benefits of a well-managed water supply. I have been compiling a list of men of practical mind suitable for such a commission. I would value your thoughts upon my return. The message is clear. I haven't forgotten our deal, I'm working on it, and I expect you to hold up your end. The mainstream historical fact of this system is its importance. The vast majority of political deal-making and intellectual exchange in the Roman world happened through these meticulously crafted letters, carried by trusted slaves across mountains and seas. The next letter is to a younger senator, a client of yours named Decius, who lacks your seniority but has a sharp eye and reliable ears in the forum. His missive is to be your eyes and ears. To him, you can be more direct. Keep me informed of the mood regarding the Aqua Claudia, you dictate. Note who speaks for it and who against. Pay particular attention to the circles of Senator Felix. Any news of his associations would be of interest. This is the request for intelligence, plain and simple. You seal both letters with a dollop of wax and the press of your griffin ring, the physical stamp of your authority that turns a piece of papyrus into a binding extension of your will. The reply from Decius arrives 2 days later, carried by a dust-covered slave who had clearly ridden hard. The letter is brief, written in a slightly rushed hand. The news is not good. Felix has been active. He's been hosting small private dinners for key votes on the aqueduct committee. More worryingly, Decius writes, there is a rumor, unconfirmed as yet, of a poet being paid to circulate verses questioning the integrity of certain public works projects and the men who champion them. The threat is oblique, but unmistakable. The quirky, fringe tactic of using poets as political hitmen Crafting catchy, scandalous verses that would be repeated in taverns and scribbled on walls was a notoriously effective way to smear an opponent. Your poet Gallus had clearly chosen his patron. This incoming information demands an outgoing response. You spend the afternoon dictating a new flurry of letters, one to a friendly tribune, suggesting he might investigate the source of these malicious verses, another to a cousin who owns an insula on the Aventine, urging him to rally the local landlords to petition the Senate for the aqueduct, applying pressure from below. Historians still argue whether this constant stream of correspondence from country villas actually allowed senators to govern effectively from a distance, or if it merely created a chaotic, delayed reaction system of government prone to misinformation and intrigue. As you watch the slave gallop off towards Rome with your sealed replies, you feel the fragility of the whole endeavor. You are playing a game of chess by mail, and your opponent might have already moved his knight. The tranquility of the villa is now a thin veneer over the familiar, grinding anxiety of politics. You are away from Rome, but Rome has never felt closer. The political anxieties, carried by dusty slaves from Rome, begin to curdle the peaceful villa atmosphere. You can't spend another day staring at the hills, wondering what verses Gallus is crafting, or what deal Felix is closing. Action, even symbolic action, is the only antidote to this creeping paralysis. And for a Roman of your station, the most potent form of action, outside of war, is hospitality. Power isn't just exercised in the forum, it is cemented over a dinner table. Alexandros, you announce, the decision solidifying as you speak. We will host a cena. A proper one. Send an invitation to the governor. He's touring the region, is he not? Let him see how a true Roman lives. The villa, so recently a sanctuary of quiet, erupts into a controlled frenzy of preparation. The simple rhythm of estate life is shattered by a new, urgent tempo. The invitation, a formal, beautifully scripted roll of papyrus, is dispatched by a mounted slave to the governor's temporary residence in the nearby town. The next 48 hours are a blur of organized chaos. The structor, the slave in charge of arranging and serving the food, becomes the temporary general of your household. His voice, a constant commanding presence in the kitchens. The fishermen from the river are commissioned to bring their finest catch. A boy is sent running to a neighboring estate to borrow a particularly talented slave girl who plays the lyre. The villa's own cellars are opened, and the air fills with the scent of aged wine being decanted from amphorae into glass jugs. You even authorize the slaughter of a suckling pig, a significant expense, but one demanded by the occasion. This is the mainstream historical fact of the Cena, the Roman dinner party. It was a primary tool of social and political bonding, a theatre where wealth, taste and influence were put on spectacular display. The day of the Cena arrives. As the sun begins to dip behind the hills, casting long dramatic shadows across the valley, the guests start to appear. They arrive in litters or on horseback, their own small retinues of slaves adding to the buzz of activity in your courtyard. The dawn at the Tiber villa is a different creature altogether. It doesn't arrive with a discreet cough, but as a slow, golden wash over the Sabine hills, accompanied by a chorus of birdsong so loud and varied, it feels like a performance put on just for you. There is no toga to be donned, no clients to be greeted. The first order of business, after a simple breakfast of bread, cheese, and the villa's own figs, is a tour of the latifundia, the sprawling estate that is the true source of your wealth. This isn't a senator's leisurely stroll. It's a general inspecting his troops, a CEO walking the factory floor. Your steward, a wiry old man named Faustus, whose face is as weathered as the olive trees he tends, is your guide. He leads you out from the manicured gardens of the villa proper, down a gravel path that winds through the working heart of the estate. The air, still cool and fresh, carries the rich, loamy scent of turned earth and the sweet perfume of flowering vines. The first stop is the olive groves. The trees, gnarled and silver-leaved, are ancient, some planted by your grandfather. They stand in orderly rows on the terraced hillsides, their value immeasurable. Faustus stops by one, knocking on the trunk with a knuckle. "A good year, Dominus," he says, his voice raspy. The bloom was strong. "If the rains hold, we'll have enough oil to fill the dolia, and then some." He points out a section of younger trees, a recent planting to replace ones lost to a blight. This is the mainstream historical fact of the Roman agricultural economy. The vast, slave-worked latifundia like this one were the engines that produced the surplus that fed the cities and funded the lifestyles and political careers of the elite. Your power in the Curia is directly rooted in the health of these trees. Beyond the groves lie the vineyards, the neat lines of vines staked to young poplar trees. Here the work is more intense. A gang of slaves, maybe 20 of them, men and women, are moving slowly between the rows, their backs bent as they tie up new growth and carefully prune excess leaves. Avilicus, the slave overseer, stands watching them, a short whip coiled at his belt. He doesn't use it. His presence is enough. The slaves work in a tired, rhythmic silence, their faces blank. The most important guest, Gaius Norbanus Flaccus, the governor of the province, arrives last, as is his right. He is a man in his 50s, with a carefully trimmed beard in the current Greek fashion, and the calm, assessing eyes of a career bureaucrat. You greet him at the entrance to the triclinium, the dining room, with a warm clasp of the forearm. "Governor, your presence honors my humble home." He offers a polished smile. "The honor is mine, Senator. To escape the paperwork, if only for an evening, is a gift." The triclinium is the finest room in the villa. 3 plush cushioned couches are arranged in a horseshoe around a single low table made of citrus wood, its grain a swirling masterpiece of nature. The walls are painted with vivid scenes of Bacchic revels, nymphs and satyrs dancing in eternal celebration. You guide the governor to the place of honor, the locus consularis, on the central couch. You recline to his left, while other local dignitaries, a wealthy equestrian who runs the marble quarries, the retired centurion, who owns the largest farm in the valley, take the remaining spots. This careful seating arrangement is politics in itself. You don't dine facing each other. You recline side by side, a physical manifestation of alliance and intimacy. The meal begins. It is a symphony of extravagant, often bizarre flavors. The first course, the gustatio, consists of eggs drizzled with a fermented fish sauce called garum, oysters served on a bed of snow brought down from the highest peaks and stored in straw-lined pits, and a salad of wild greens and edible flowers. The conversation is light, focused on the governor's travels, the health of the emperor, the quality of the local wine. Then comes the mensa prima, the main course. The star is the suckling pig, roasted whole and presented on a massive silver platter, an apple in its mouth. It is surrounded by dishes of thrushes in a wine sauce, a ragout of mussels and sea urchins, and tender cuts of goat roasted with figs. The governor raises an eyebrow, impressed. "You eat better in Tibur than we do in the provincial capital," he remarks, and you feel a surge of satisfaction. This is the quirky, fringe aspect of Roman gourmet culture, the relentless pursuit of exotic and expensive ingredients, not always for taste, but for the story they tell about the host's reach and sophistication. As the slaves clear the main plates and bring in the mensa secunda, a selection of fruits, nuts and honeycakes, the conversation, lubricated by cup after cup of strong, honeyed wine, turns to more serious matters. The governor, his face slightly flushed, leans closer. "This aqueduct project of yours, Marcus," he says, his voice low enough that only you and the man on his other side can hear. "A worthy endeavor. Good water is the foundation of a civilized province. My own staff in the city complain constantly of the taste of the Tiber." He takes a sip of wine. It would be a shame if such a public good were delayed by private squabbles. He doesn't mention Felix by name. He doesn't have to. The message is clear. He is aware of the opposition, and his opinion is favorable to your cause. This is the entire point of the extravagant, ruinously expensive evening. Not the food, not the wine, but this single quiet moment of political alignment, secured not in the curia, but on a dining couch, with the scent of roasted pig and expensive perfume hanging in the air. The sweet, heavy scent of honeycakes and wine hangs in the triclinium like a perfumed fog. The slaves have cleared the final course and now move silently, refilling cups with a finer, unmixed vintage. The lyre player, the girl you borrowed, begins a soft, melancholic melody in the corner, her fingers plucking a tune that speaks of lost love and distant shores. The mood is mellow, satiated. The governor is reclining comfortably, his initial bureaucratic reserve melted away by the heat of the food and the steady flow of alcohol. The local dignitaries are laughing at a bawdy joke told by the retired centurion. The business of the evening, the subtle political alliance, has been successfully concluded. And then the philosopher speaks. His name is Dio, and he is a Greek, of course, a part of the governor's retinue. He is a thin, ascetic-looking man with intense eyes and a beard that seems to actively resist grooming. He had been quiet for most of the meal, eating little, observing much. Now, as the conversation lulls, he swirls the dark wine in his clay cup. He had refused the fine glass, a small act of theatrical austerity, and fixes his gaze on you. An impressive display. Senator, he begins, his voice a dry, clear counterpoint to the room's languid warmth. Truly, the coordination of it all, from the snow for the oysters to the music of the spheres from this talented child. It speaks to a formidable will, an ability to impose order upon chaos. He pauses, letting the faint praise hang in the air. A hook. But I wonder, does it ever feel heavy? You look at him, your own wine cup halfway to your lips. Heavy, Dio? The weight of it, he elaborates, gesturing vaguely with his free hand. A gesture that seems to encompass the entire villa, the estate, your life. This endless pursuit. The aqueducts, the senatorial debates, He glances at the empty silver platter that recently held the suckling pig. The gastronomic diplomacy. You Romans are brilliant builders, unparalleled organizers. You conquer chaos by paving it over with marble and legislating it into submission. But in doing so, I wonder if you have simply built a more beautiful, more complex cage. A tense silence falls over the triclinium. The centurion stops laughing. The lyre player, sensing the shift, lets her melody fade away. The governor looks on, amused, a small smile playing on his lips. This is the after-dinner entertainment he had perhaps anticipated. The mainstream historical fact of such encounters was the constant, prickly dialogue between Roman practical power and Greek philosophical inquiry, a culture clash that played out in villas and palaces across the empire. You speak of cages, you reply, setting your cup down carefully. I see foundations. Aqueducts bring health, not confinement. Laws bring justice, not restriction. This pursuit, as you call it, is what lifts men out of the mud, does it? Dio counters, his eyes gleaming. Or does it merely create a more elaborate mud? You fret over the price of Egyptian linen while your slaves till the fields. The mainstream historical fact of this exodus is that it was a standard rhythm of life for the Roman elite. Every summer, those who could afford it fled the overcrowded, malodorous, and plague-prone city for the health and tranquility of their country estates. After several hours, the landscape begins to change. The land rises, and the air grows noticeably cooler and drier. The dusty plains give way to rolling, tree-covered hills. You catch the distant, thunderous roar of falling water before you see it. The Anio River, cascading down the slopes of the Tiburtine hills. And then you see it. Your villa, nestled into the hillside like a natural outcropping of the land itself. It's not a fortress-like city house, but a sprawling open complex designed to embrace the landscape. White colonnades gleam against the dark green of cypress trees, and terraces spill down towards the river valley. The litter is set down gently in the main courtyard. You step out, and the feeling is one of profound release. The silence is almost deafening. It's a living silence, broken only by the whisper of the wind in the pines, the relentless, soothing crash of the waterfalls, and the chirrup of cicadas. The air is scented with pine resin and the damp stone of the fountains that channel the river water through the villa itself. This is the quirky fringe benefit of true wealth in Rome. Not just gold, but silence, clean air, and a view unmarred by another man's washing line. The staff, a skeleton crew maintained year-round, is lined up to greet you. The steward, an old bow-legged fellow who has been here since your father's time, beams with genuine pleasure. There are no clients here, no political rivals, just the people who look after your land. You are shown to your private suite of rooms which open directly onto a shaded portico overlooking the valley. The rooms are airy, the walls painted with frescoes of idealized landscapes even more beautiful than the one outside your window. Hunters in lush forests, nymphs by tranquil pools. You change out of your travel-stained clothes into a simple, lightweight tunic, feeling the freedom of movement return. Historians still argue whether these country villas were genuine retreats for philosophical contemplation, or merely the ultimate symbols of conspicuous consumption, places to be seen not to have been in Rome. As you stand on the portico, watching a hawk circle lazily in the vast, empty sky, you don't care about the argument. You only care about the profound, soul-deep quiet that is settling over you, a balm for your city-weary spirit. The game continues, but for a few precious days, you are playing from a distance, and the moves feel less desperate, the stakes less personal. The governor and his retinue, including the troublesome philosopher, depart the next morning in a cloud of dust and polite farewells. The villa settles back into its rhythm, but the quiet feels different now. Dio's words echo in the spacious halls, a ghost at the feast. The most successful bird in the cage. The phrase circles in your mind as you take your morning walk through the olive groves. The gnarled trees, symbols of your family's enduring strength, now look like ancient bars. The roar of the distant waterfalls sounds less like a natural wonder and more like the relentless turning of a great hidden water wheel, powering the machine of your life. You shake your head, trying to dispel the thought. This is what comes of entertaining Greeks. You are pulled from this unproductive line of thinking by a commotion at the edge of the estate, near the boundary stone that marks the beginning of a tenant farmer's small plot. Faustus is there, his voice raised in argument with a man you recognize as one of your colony, a farmer named Spurius. The man is hat in hand, his face a mask of desperation. He sees you and falls to his knees, the dust puffing up around his worn tunic. Patronus! I beg you, he cries out, his voice cracking. A word I beg of you. Faustus shoots you an apologetic look. It is nothing, Dominus, a matter of his rent. He claims he cannot pay. You sigh. This is the part of the idyll that is never mentioned in poetry. You gesture for the man to rise. Speak, Spurius! The story pours out of him in a ragged torrent. His youngest son, his strongest worker, was conscripted last year for a campaign in Britannia. Then a fever took 2 of his oxen. The spring on his plot, never reliable, has run almost dry, and what's left of his wheat is stunted and weak. He cannot meet his quota of grain for the rent, and he fears you will revoke his lease and cast his family off the land. We have nowhere to go, Dominus. My daughter, we will starve. They are your most valuable and most volatile assets. You feel a familiar, complicated pang looking at them. They are property, tools to be maintained, but they are also human beings whose discontent could, in the worst case, flare into a rebellion that would see this entire villa put to the torch. Faustus mutters about a Gallic slave who tried to run away last month, was caught by the river, and had his forehead branded with the letters Fug for fugitivus. He won't try again, Faustus says with grim finality. It's a quirky fringe reality of this bucolic life, the constant, low-level fear that underpinned the entire system of slave labor, a fear that left its mark on both the enslaved and the enslaver. You continue on to the heart of the villa's industrial sector, the oil press. The building is a large open-sided shed, dark and cool inside. The air is thick with the pungent, greasy smell of olives. The massive stone press, a labyrinth of levers and counterweights, stands idle now. But come harvest, this place will be a hive of activity, working day and night. Great ceramic jars, the dolia, taller than a man, are sunk into the ground, waiting to be filled with the precious green gold oil. The value contained in this single shed would be a king's ransom to one of the farmers you passed on the road. Historians still argue whether the efficiency of these large slave estates actually strangled technological innovation in agriculture, as there was little incentive to improve tools when labor was so cheap and abundant. Looking at the brute force mechanics of the press, a design that hasn't changed in a century, you can see their point. The final part of the tour takes you to the pastures on the higher ground, where the sheep are kept. The flock is a moving, bleating carpet of dirty white, tended by a solitary slave boy with a dog. This is where the wool for your tenants' rent and for your own household comes from. It's a less glamorous but steady source of income. As you stand there, looking out over the patchwork of your lands, the olives, the vines, the pastures, the woods, the full scale of it hits you. This isn't just a pretty view. It's a complex, breathing, producing organism. Every tree, every vine, every slave is a cog in a machine designed for one purpose: to generate the wealth that allows you to strut on the stage of Rome. The debates in the Curia, the subtle alliances, the games of power, they are all just the froth on the surface. The real work, the foundation of it all, is here, in the silent, sun-drenched toil of the countryside. The city is where you spend the fortune. This is where you mine it. You debate the virtues of different oysters while men in the Subura fight over moldy bread. You seek to control the very water that falls from the sky, to channel it, to tax it, to own it. Is this freedom, or is it the most exquisite form of slavery, enslavement to the very system you have built? This is the quirky fringe perspective that Greek philosophers loved to introduce into Roman comfort. The idea that the entire sprawling, magnificent edifice of Roman civilization was a form of collective madness, a distraction from the simple truths of nature and the soul. You feel a flash of genuine anger, hot and sharp. This man, who eats your food and drinks your wine under the protection of your roof, dares to critique the very essence of your world. But you are a senator. You do not lose your temper. You channel it. We build cages, you say. You respond, your voice calm but edged. You Greeks, you merely describe them. You sit in the shade of our porticos and write elegant scrolls about the absurdity of it all, while we are the ones who ensure the porticos are built, that the city is safe enough for you to think your deep thoughts. What has your philosophy built lately, Dio? A better world, or just a more clever argument? The governor chuckles softly, enjoying the debate. Historians still argue whether these philosophical exchanges at Roman dinners were genuine meetings of the mind or just another form of elite entertainment, an intellectual blood sport where the host was expected to defend his way of life. Dio does not seem offended. He merely smiles, a thin, knowing smile. A fair point, Senator. A very Roman point. We describe the cage. You are merely the most successful bird that has ever lived within it. He takes a final sip of his wine. But tell me, when you are alone, in the silence of the night, do you ever hear the song of the birds outside? The question hangs in the air, unanswered. The conversation slowly turns to other things, but the philosopher's words have left a mark, a tiny, invisible crack in the marble facade of the evening. The cage, he called it, and for a fleeting, unsettling moment, in the silence after his question, you thought you could hear it too. The clemency shown to Spurius settles over the estate not as a gentle benediction, but as a complicating precedent. Faustus's subsequent reports are tinged with a new, subtle caution, as if the very soil has become less predictable. Other tenants, emboldened, have begun to present their own, lesser grievances. The orderly rows of your ledgers now feel threatened by the messy, human variable of hope. This, combined with the lingering disquiet from the philosopher's words, makes the tranquil beauty of Tiber feel suddenly claustrophobic. The cage, if that is what it is no more comfortable for being made of marble and scenic views. A restlessness takes hold of you. The political season in Rome is stirring, a tide you can feel pulling at you from over the horizon. The aqueduct, Felix, the poet, the debt to Sura. These are not problems that can be solved from a countryside portico. They are creatures of the city, and they must be faced in their native habitat. The decision to return is made with less relief than the decision to leave, but with a greater sense of purpose. The preparations are more somber this time. The light tunics are folded away. The toga is laid out with a sense of grim inevitability. The villa's staff lines up to see you off, their faces a mix of regret and resignation. The journey back to Rome is the reverse of your escape, a slow, deliberate immersion back into the world you had fled. The clean scent of pine and damp earth is gradually overwhelmed by the distant, then immediate smell of smoke, sewage, and humanity. The silence is first broken by the occasional cart, then by the constant grinding roar of the city. It feels like donning a heavy, familiar armor. You do not enter Rome in the relaxed litter this time. You have the bearers set you down just outside the Capena gate. You need to walk, to feel the city's pulse under your feet, to reacclimate to its frantic energy. The transition is jarring. The wide, tree-lined Via Appia funnels you into the crowded, shadowed streets, the sky shrinking to a narrow strip of dusty blue between the towering, precarious insulae. The noise is a physical assault after the country quiet. 1,000 different conversations, the shrieks of children, the braying of a donkey, the rhythmic hammering from a dozen different workshops. Fragile reality of the patron-client relationship, stretched over miles of countryside. In Rome, your clients provide political support. Here, they provide a share of their crop. In return, you are expected to offer protection and leniency in hard times. But where does duty end and financial folly begin? The mainstream historical fact of this system was its essential inequality. The patron held all the power, and the client's survival hinged on his goodwill, or lack thereof. Faustus looks at you, his expression neutral, but his meaning clear. Sentiment cannot run an estate. If you let Spurius slide, every other tenant will have a hard luck story by tomorrow. The ledgers, those relentless arbiters of reality, demand their due. But then you look at Spurius's face, at the genuine terror in his eyes. You think of the suckling pig the governor enjoyed last night, a single dish that cost more than this man's entire annual yield. You think of the poet Gallus, trading verses for silver, and Senator Felix playing his games of power. And then you think of the philosopher's cage. Is this it? The the relentless, grinding logic of profit and loss, the system that demands a man be ruined for a few missing bushels of grain. This is the open, unspoken debate that every landowner faced. Historians still argue whether the relationship between Roman landlords and their tenants was one of mutual, if unequal, benefit, or a form of ruthless economic exploitation barely softened by occasional acts of mercy. Looking at Spurius, you see not a cog in your machine, but a man about to be broken by it. Faustus, you say, your voice quieter than you intended. Have the spring on his land inspected. If it can be deepened, have it done. Charge the cost to my account. You turn to Spurius. You will have 1 year. Half your rent this harvest, the full amount next, plus half again to cover the debt. Your son's military service will be counted in your favor. Do not make me regret this. The gratitude on the man's face is so profound, it is almost painful to behold. He showers you with blessings, kissing the edge of your tunic before Faustus leads him away. You stand alone for a moment, the morning sun warm on your face. You have just acted against your own immediate financial interest. You have perhaps been a good man, but as you walk back towards the villa, the question remains: did you do it out of goodness, or merely to prove the philosopher wrong? The cage, it seems, has many forms, and the most confining one may be the need to constantly justify your place within it.